Shalom Uvracha. Parashas Eikev is filled with sachar va'onesh, reward and punishment. The beginning of the parasha tells us that if we listen, v'haya Eikev tishma'un, if we heed the words of Hashem and His instructions, then everything will be good. Later on, we have the second parasha, the second passage of Kriya Shema. And what do we read there? V'haya im shamaya tishma'un, if you'll heed, if you'll listen to the mitzvahs of Hashem, then v'nosati matar artzachem, then we'll receive rainfall, and then we'll live upon the land, and we'll enjoy its bounty. And if chas v'shalom, we don't heed the word of Hashem, then we won't have rainfall, and then we will lose our ability to live upon the land that Hashem has given us. The whole parasha is occupied with reward and with punishment. But on the other hand, we find in the Mishnah, Antignois ish soichai teaches us in the Mishnah in Avos that we should not be like servants who fulfill the wish of the master with the intention of receiving reward, al manas lekabel pras, but rather we should be servants who perform our master's bidding, shaloi al manas lekabel pras, without the intention of receiving reward. And the question is, how do these go together? The entire Torah seems to be telling us, think about the reward. Think about what you'll be getting out of keeping the mitzvahs. If you'll do the mitzvot, then you'll receive bounty and goodness and rainfall, and you'll be able to live in tranquility on the land that God gives you. Things will be wonderful. And then the Mishnah tells us, yeah, but don't think about it. Put it out of your mind. Don't even raise the thought of receiving reward. How do these things go together? How can we square them? The answer is that these are two very different types of reward. Two very different thoughts. The Mishnah is telling us, don't think about a pras. And pras means something that is superficial. Something which is like a child that does a good deed because his parents promise him a lollipop. So he wants the popsicle. He wants whatever tasty snack the parents promise him, and therefore he's doing the good deed in order to get the snack. Says the Mishnah, that's not the way. Don't think about the snack. Don't think about that reward which is promised. But the Torah does not mean that type of reward. The Torah is telling us about Hashem's bounty within a framework of a connection, of a relationship with Hashem. The Torah is telling us if we'll do Hashem's bidding as a part of that relationship with the HaKadosh Baruch Hu, then the other side of that relationship is that everything will be good. Meaning we'll feel, we'll sense, we'll experience the goodness of Hashem. And that type of reward, says the Torah, is something that we should certainly be thinking about. It should be at the front of our consciousness. It should be our intention. And this we learn from the Ramchal. The Ramchal says that when the Gemara says, Sachar mitzvah mitzvah, that the reward of one mitzvah is the mitzvah itself, then that can be understood in two ways. The Gemara says, because mitzvah gereres mitzvah, one mitzvah leads to another. You do one mitzvah, you get into the thrust, or you get into the environment of mitzvahs, and one mitzvah brings another. But says the Ramchal, there's also a deeper meaning. And the deeper meaning is that the reward of a mitzvah is that mitzvah itself. Because what is a mitzvah? When I perform a mitzvah, I am performing an act of closeness with Hashem. The mitzvah itself, in the Hasidic Sfarim, they say that mitzvah also reflects the word tzavta, togetherness. When we do a mitzvah, we're together with Hashem. We express, we articulate a closeness to Hashem. And that closeness, says the Ramchal, that's the reward itself. It's not even a reward. It's just a consequence. When we do a mitzvah, we're close. And that closeness is the goodness and the bounty and the eternal reward of every mitzvah. And that's something which reflects the basic desire of Hashem. Why do we need this entire edifice of mitzvahs? Because Hashem wants our closeness. We do the mitzvah, we realize that closeness. The reward is latent, it's built in to the mitzvahs themselves. So that reward, of course, we should have intention for. We want the closeness, we want to experience it, to feel it. Yes, in all the bounty of the land, the goodness of living in God's promised land, where we experience His goodness within the framework of the relationship. And that's very different to the pras that Antigonus Isoiche tells us, be careful, don't have intention for something superficial. Because that's something superficial, not only is it not something that brings you closer to Hashem, on the contrary, it can also bring you a distance because you have intention for your own goodness and not for the connection with the Kadosh Baruch Hu, with Hashem. This teaches us a very important lesson about Sachar v'Onesh, reward and punishment, which, like the Rambam says, is one of the principles of our faith, but it also teaches us something about relationships with others. Our world is filled with giving and receiving. The whole time we give and receive to family members, to parents, to spouses, to friends, to anybody. We're giving and we're receiving. But that giving and receiving can be transactional. It can be egoistical. We receive and we give because of our self-interest. We want to take what's good for us, what we enjoy, and we want to give because sometimes giving can also be out of a self-interest that we're going to get something back. That's a world of giving and receiving, which is a world that's divorced from relationships. That's a giving because I want to give, and it's a receiving because I want to take. However, the Torah directs us to a giving and a receiving which is very different. They're not transactional, but rather they're within the framework of a relationship. They're a part of a connection to someone else. Hashem wants to give us out of His love, and we receive out of that relationship with Hashem, that closeness. The same thing with others. We give because we have a connection with the person that we're giving to, whether it's a spouse or a child or a parent or a friend or anybody. We have a connection to him, and therefore we give from ourselves to the other with an expression, a realization of that connection, of that relationship, and also receiving. Receiving is the flip side of that. We receive not just the object that we wish to receive, that we wish to enjoy, but we receive the other person. We receive him or her, that he or she is giving something to us, and we receive that connection. We receive that relationship. And then all of the giving and receiving that takes place in our lives, and there's so much of it the whole time, is within the framework of what Rav Wolbe Zechrono Livracha used to call an Olam HaYedidus, a world of friendship, a world of relationship that encompasses all of the giving and the receiving, like we find with regard to HaKadosh Baruch Hu in Parashas Eikev and everywhere in the Torah. We should all have a wonderful Shabbos.